everyone. In this lecture, I'm going to be presenting to you Campbell's arguments for the Fregean view of meaning. In this video, I will give you an overview of this lecture and then go over some review of Frege's puzzle. In his paper, Is Sense Transparent?, Campbell provides a more advanced understanding of Frege's puzzle. The new puzzle is that in some inferences involving singular terms, we may trade on the identity of the singular terms, and in other inferences, we may not. Campbell proposes that sameness of sense is what explains when trading on identity is possible. And he argues that there must be cases where we can trade on identity. I begin now with a review of Frege's original puzzle. Also, before doing so, I want to note that this reading for this lecture, Campbell's paper Is Sense Transparent?, is quite difficult. So don't feel bad if you struggle to understand exactly what's happening throughout the entire paper. In this lecture, I will have tried my best to present to you in a clear and simple way exactly what the core takeaway should be from the paper. So now I move on to review. Here are a couple examples that illustrate Frege's puzzle. These are ones which we've already seen. So first, the ancient Greeks did not realize that the evening star, Hesperus, is the same planet as the morning star, Phosphorus. So the sentences Hesperus is Hesperus and Hesperus is Phosphorus have different cognitive values. The former sentence is a trivial truth, and even the ancient Greeks realized that this planet Hesperus is identical to itself. The second sentence, however, Hesperus is Phosphorus, is not trivial. Instead, it was something that was discovered. It was the truth of this sentence was discovered by empirical investigation, and specifically astronomy. So these two sentences, despite that they contain names with the same referent, have different cognitive values. And the puzzle is to explain how that is so. Here is another example. Suppose you are an amateur student of Roman history, and you do not realize that this guy Cicero you've heard of and this other guy Tully you have heard of are actually the same person, Marcus Tullius Cicero. So the sentences Cicero denounced Catiline and the sentence Tully denounced Catiline have different values. So just to give a bit of context for this example, so Cicero was an ancient Roman statesman, and he was famous for his oratory, and this individual Catiline was kind of someone who attempted to become emperor and overthrow the republic kind of a bit before Caesar came around and was more successful. And what happened? And Cicero played a key part in stopping this individual Catiline from successfully taking control of the Roman government by giving a speech or an oratory denouncing him. So when you learn this, and you do not realize that Cicero and Tully are the same person, when you learn that Cicero denounced Catiline, you are learning something else than when you learn that Tully denounced Catiline. Because if you do not realize that Cicero and Tully are the same person, you might believe, say, the first thing, Cicero denounced Catiline, and not the second. So these two sentences have different cognitive value. Despite that, the only difference are names with the same referent. So again, the puzzle is, how is it that there is this difference in cognitive value when there is sameness of referent? Now, what was Frege's reaction to this puzzle, to these puzzles? So for Frege, the meaning of a sentence has all of the following features. So the meaning of a sentence is something that satisfies all of the following theoretical roles. First, the meaning of a sentence is built out of the meanings of its parts. So there's a small typo there, but let me just read this correctly. The meaning of a sentence is built out of the meaning of its parts. And this is the idea of how meaning is compositional. Now, the second principle or feature is as follows. The meaning of a sentence is a thought or proposition. And a thought or proposition is something that is either true or false. Okay, so it's a complete kind of claim about the way things are. And as a claim about the way that things are, it's something that is either true or false. And so since the truth and falsity are the reference of a sentence, what this principle 2 reflects is Frege's claim that sense determines referent, or sense determines reference. And in particular, the sense of a sentence, i.e. a thought or a proposition, determines its truth or falsity. So now 1 and 2 together mean that the sense of expressions that are parts of sentences must also determine reference in the world. So, for instance, if the sentence Cicero denounced Catiline, if the thought or proposition has to determine whether it's true or false, then the name Cicero must contribute, or must, the sense, sorry, let me rephrase. In order for the thought or proposition expressed by the sentence Cicero denounced Catiline to be something that determines whether it's true or false, since that thought or proposition is built out of the meanings of the parts of the sentence, the name Cicero must contribute a sense which itself determines a referent, this individual out there in the world, this person Cicero. That is because the truth of the entire sentence depends on external entities. For instance, this person Cicero that the sentence is talking about. Okay, so the notion of meaning for Frege was something that determined reference. Now, finally, principle 3, the meaning of a sentence doesn't just determine its referent, i.e. whether it's true or false. Furthermore, this thing which does that determining also explains the cognitive value of the sentence. So the notion of sense for Frege in 2 and 3 has both a metaphysical and an epistemic role. So the sense determines the referent, but also plays an epistemic or rational role for the individuals who grasp that sense. Okay, this is an important idea, specifically the idea that in 2 and 3 that the same thing both determines reference and has or explains cognitive value. Frege's idea that the one and the same thing does both those things, we'll see, is a claim which is disputed by many authors, and we'll come back to this. What I want to note now is that given these three principles, 1 to 3, the examples above show that co-referential names may have or do have as their meanings different ways of determining or thinking of that same referent, okay? So given these three principles about the nature of meaning, Frege's puzzles showed, according to him, that meaning was more than reference. Now, to return to the point which I just made about whether the same thing satisfies both 2 and 3, we already saw a view which denies this, and this view is direct reference theory from Kripke. So a very influential take on meaning, which we saw the beginning of last week with Kripke, denies principle 3. Specifically, and to unpack that, this take on meaning denies that the meaning explains the cognitive value that the expression has. So, according to this alternative, there isn't one thing, meaning that it has the metaphysical role of determining reference and also the epistemic role of explaining cognitive value. Therefore, proponents of this alternative view must give a different explanation of the differences in cognitive value above, for instance, in the examples we gave above. Another way of thinking of this is that you can think of Frege puzzles. So contrasts in cognitive value where you have sameness of reference, as in 1 and 2, you can think of these puzzles plus the theoretical assumptions 1 to 3 as generating arguments against the direct reference theory, i.e. the view that meaning is just reference. So again, this is a point which we will return to. For the purposes of this lecture, I want you to put that aside for the moment, i.e. thinking about direct reference theory and how it could possibly solve these puzzles. Instead, what I want you to ask yourself is simply, what is cognitive value? Now, I said in lecture 1 the following. The cognitive value of an expression is its role in our rational lives. For instance, in the acquisition and application of knowledge, justification, action, and reasoning. Now, the main thread of this lecture will be that Campbell provides a way of making this notion of cognitive value more precise. And going hand in hand with that, he provides a more advanced version of Frege's puzzle.